Okay. Good afternoon, everyone, and good morning for those who are in a different time zone than the Eastern time zone. Welcome to the Red Hat Ansible workshop. I'm Tom Mitchell from Flagship Solutions Group, and I've been given the privilege to kick this call off. Before we start this workshop, I want to let everybody know that we are recording this presentation and this workshop. So if anyone has an objection to that, please feel free to drop off and contact us, and we'll get material to you a different way. We're doing that just to put into our database and be able to share certain sound bites and things with others as we see appropriate. Again, it's Red Hat workshop. We really appreciate everybody attending. We know this is a long session, but we hope and feel that it will be worth your while to attend this and give you some good insight into how Red Hat Ansible is delivering to IT organizations, really around multiple aspects of your organization: network security, you see it there on the chart, DevOps tools, and more. So Marshall and Felicia will take us through those details. Just a quick summary about who Flagship is, in case you don't know. We are an IBM business partner. We are a premier IBM business partner, and by that I mean we sell IBM products and services, and then we have a whole plethora of services talent within our organization where we deliver those solutions to our clients to make sure that those solutions are working and those kinds of things. So we believe in IBM. I personally worked for IBM for 18 years and believe in the products and the innovations that IBM has. And as a business partner, I now have the opportunity to deliver those solutions to clients. So you can see here some of the things that we do. We are a managed services company. So the forefront of the things that we do are managed services, and that means we are bringing service solutions to you. And behind that are, some of the products and things like that. So we will help you any way that you want us to help you. And meaning we have some clients that just say, hey, Flagship, I just need help installing this security product, or perhaps it's some IBM storage or those kinds of things. So we're very task and project oriented. But we can work in other environments too, where clients are saying, you know what, I need a platform delivered to me. I need an operating system platform. I don't want to worry about how to manage that platform, may not even worry about where that platform resides, but I just need that, and I need someone to manage it for me. So we operate in that as well. We also get involved in customers' applications sometimes, depending upon what that is. We will even manage applications from a client where it makes sense. Just a little bit of thing on security. We actually stole this right off of some IBM charts, but this is kind of like the ecosystem of security, and you can see some of the IBM products that are there that provide these types of solutions. We operate around this whole wheel and this whole ecosystem, and you may hear some of the products mentioned today, but we do operate and have services around each one of these. With that, I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time on Flagship. Just wanted to let you know who we are. I'll be back towards the end to close out the workshop and give you some exciting offers that we wanted to give to you as a result of attending this workshop. So Marshall, I'm going to turn it over to you, and you can take it away. Thank you.
All right, fantastic. Thank you. Let me share my screen. Let me find the controls. All right. Well, thank you, Tom, for that great introduction. All right, so we are going to go into the Ansible Security Automation Workshop. All right, thank you. Yes, thank you for attending. So the workshop that we're going to be going over today, it's an introduction to Ansible Security Automation. It's really, you know, the slide says it's geared for system administrators and security operators, but this is really an introduction to security automation, and it's really, this is geared toward for really anybody. So so don't feel intimidated by the title slide here. Just a little housekeeping. So we've got 3 hours scheduled for today. So we're going to plan on taking a break about every hour. So we'll take a break at around 2 o'clock, and then we'll finish up around, or we'll take a break around 2 o'clock and 3 o'clock, and then we'll finish up around 4 o'clock. So if you need to take a break before then, feel free to. Everything moves along pretty quickly. We have quite a bit to accomplish. For the takeaways, there's some you know, quite a bit of material that we'll be going through. So we'll discuss some of the takeaways as we get to them, and then at the end of the presentation, Tom's going to talk about a couple of the offers that Flagship will have, but we have a great 60-day trial of Ansible, and then we also have a security we also have a security consultation that you can schedule. So with that, I'm also going to go through and allow everybody to talk. Feel free to go off mute if you have a question, if you have any or if you're having any issues. Also, feel free to use the chat, and I'll keep track of the chat. So this is really an interactive session. So this is not something that you're just going to listen to me drone on and on and on. So what we're going to do, I'm going to talk for a little bit. We'll go over some of the material, and then we'll go right into some labs. So you'll have a hands-on. Hopefully everyone got the email just a few minutes ago with the login screen or the login link. So if you can go to that at some point while I am going over some of this material, if you can just enter your name and email address, it'll give you your assigned workstation, and that will lead into the labs that we have. All right. So what we're going to be going over today, so we're going to go over an introduction to Ansible automation. So we'll talk just about Ansible generically. We're going to talk about how it works. We're going to talk about modules, tasks, and playbooks. And then we're going to go into using Ansible with various security tools. So within our labs, we have a SIM. We have QRadar as our SIM. We have an IDS system. We're using Snort today. And then we have a checkpoint firewall that we're going to be using. So we have a pretty good demo environment, or a pretty good lab environment to use. All right. So for our introduction, what we're going to be talking about is just what Ansible automation is and what it can do. So as the slide says, automation happens when we do something that we don't want to do again. And so that's what really Ansible does, is Ansible helps us to automate tasks that are just become repetitive. So these are the three goals of Ansible. And so within Ansible, as we move through each of these phases, we can see that it really multiplies the, it really takes and multiplies the personnel that we have and makes them more productive. So as we move to the acceleration, we can see that it makes one person more productive. As we move to integration, it makes them even more productive. And then the collaboration makes them even more productive. So when we use Ansible, we can enable our organizations to do more work with the limited resources that we're given. And we can do that work efficiently, we can do that work productively, and we can make sure the work is done correctly the first time without having to depend on human error and some all these other things that we deal with when we do things manually. So what is Ansible automation? So as we see here, Ansible automation, it's an enterprise framework for automating IT, or for automation across IT operations. So we see here that in the slide, so Ansible really has a couple of core components. Ansible is built on top of the Ansible engine. So Ansible engine is a command line driven tool that performs the automation tasks. As we see, it's simple, powerful, agentless. And then we have the Ansible Tower. And Ansible Tower really extends Ansible and provides the control, delegation, and scale. And so what we can do with Tower is we can provide that granular control so that we can give access for different people within our organization to run these playbooks, to make modifications, to do changes, or to do these tasks within our environment, to do this automation and have control of it. We can have auditing of it. We can have a lot of the things that we need in an enterprise environment. So that's what we have with Ansible suite. So with Ansible, we have it's based on these three principles. It's simple. You don't need a PhD to run Ansible. You don't need a 4-year degree. It's really designed to be fairly intuitive. So there's some simple operations within Ansible that don't take a lot of learning, or it's not a huge learning curve from our traditional IT skills to become productive quickly. So we can leverage the skills that we already have, and then we can work into the more advanced parts of Ansible. And then that moves into the powerful part into the middle. It has powerful app deployment, configuration management, workflow orchestration, and network automation capabilities that we can use to automate our environment. And then when we look at the agentless architecture, we don't have to go around and install a bunch of agents. We don't have to manage those agents, which is really the challenging part when we start talking about deployments with a lot of agents. The installation usually, that can be the challenging part, but keeping thousands, hundreds of thousands of agents updated can be a huge challenge in and of itself. As it mentions here, exploitation as well, that provides another point when we have agents installed to, as from a security standpoint. So Ansible works across all of the teams that we have within us, within our organization. So we could really use Ansible across all of these teams. And so this is one of the great things about Ansible, is that it's not a siloed product. It's not a product that just security would use, or just IT operations, or just the network team would use, such as some of the other tools that that we think about deploying in our network. So this is a tool that really speaks to a lot of different needs in our environments. And so we can, once we introduce this to our organization, we see a lot of different groups really looking to adopt this because it does speak to a lot of different needs across a lot of different parts of the organization. So with Ansible, there's just as we were talking about working across a broad spectrum of groups within an organization, it has a lot of use cases. So we can see that there's orchestration, configuration management, application deployment, provisioning, continuous delivery, security and compliance. These are all great things that we can automate. If we think about any one of these things, they are very important parts of of our IT life cycle. And any one of these parts of the process lead into another part. And so, especially when we're talking about security, provisioning is a key part of security, because if we don't have a consistent provisioning process, then we're not sure if we have a secure environment, because we don't know if everything is consistently configured across our environment. Application deployment, same thing. We don't know if everything's being deployed correctly. We don't know if it's being deployed consistently. Configuration management also leads into security. Who's changing what configurations? Who's authorized to change those configurations? And if someone makes an unauthorized change, how can we be notified of that? How can we find that change and either revert that change or evaluate that change? So we can use Ansible across all these different devices that are listed below that, and even more devices that are not listed, to accomplish all of these tasks. And here's another slide that just talks about some of the technologies that are commonly used in our environment. So if we look at our security column, we'll see QRadar, Splunk, and Checkpoint. Those are the three we'll be working on today. There's quite a few other vendors that Ansible works with out of the box, and they're being added to every day. Ansible is one of the most worked on collaborations within GitHub, and so it's a very active project. It's being added to every day. The technologies is being expanded at a very rapid rate. So what we see here today is just growing and growing and growing every day. And what this does is that, as the slide says, it allows us to automate these things within minutes instead of having to spend hours writing scripts. And I don't know if anyone's ever seen the XKCD comic about script development time, and how you spend a small amount of time writing the script, and then you spend a large amount of time maintaining the script, and a very small amount of time actually doing any work with the script. So yeah, kind of a funny thing. So when we look at the architecture of Ansible, we see that the Ansible automation engine is in the center of that. On the left side, we have the inputs to the automation engine, and on the right side, we have the output, or the work that we're doing with the Ansible engine. So a couple of the key components that I'd like to point out. the playbooks. So we have playbooks that are written in YAML, YAML being YAML ain't a markup language. These playbooks have all of the tasks that we're going to be executing. These tasks are executed sequentially, and they execute they invoke Ansible modules, they run the actions, they do all of the tasks that we need them to do. When we talk about modules, I like to think of modules as tools in the toolkit. So they can really be a lot of different things. Python and PowerShell are two of the examples listed here. They can really be any language. They extend Ansible, and they allow us to do many things that Ansible plugins or some of the other things that may not be intuitively capable. They allow us to extend Ansible to do those things. So when we think about making Ansible do something, we need an inventory. So the inventory allows us to group our assets into logical categories. It allows us to create ways to address these things. So as we see in our inventory here, we have our web servers grouped into a web category, our switches, firewalls, load balancers, databases. So inventory is an important part of the Ansible engine. And then when we move into the output side, we can really automate everything. And so today we're talking about security devices, but we could really be talking about Red Hat Enterprise Linux or other versions of Linux, routers, switches, just about anything. If we can address it over the network, we could automate it with Ansible. So just a little bit about Ansible working with Linux automation. So with Linux automation, we're going to have a control node, and that control node is going to connect to our remote Linux hosts, and it's going to copy the module code out to those Linux hosts. It's going to run the module, and then it's going to execute that code, and then it's going to remove that module. So depending on the host, it could SSH, it could SCP, RCP, whatever the mechanism is for a Linux host. And we'll see that in the configuration file when we take a look at that during the lab. All right. Do I have any questions about Ansible just in general right now? All right. So we'll move quickly into just the Ansible security automation basics then. So this is working into exercise 1.1. So once we get to the end of this section, we'll start exercise 1.1. So Ansible security, when we think about Ansible security in particular, this is really an expansion into a security use case. And as the slide says, the goal is to provide a more efficient, streamlined way to automate security processes and to automate the security response, incident response, and security lifecycle, so that we can provide a higher value within our team. But we can also do more than just the baseline security that's provided with these standards with like PCI, STIG, or CIS. So the Ansible security automation, there's a comprehensive solution that's put together with Ansible modules, rules, and playbooks. And as I mentioned before, there is quite a bit that addresses all of the established vendors, and we'll see some of that in action as we go through some of these labs. So when we think about Ansible security, the question comes up, is this a security solution? Is Red Hat competing against all of the other security solutions on the market? The answer is no. Ansible is not competing as a security solution. Ansible is just providing a way to enable putting together the automation to make security work better. So this is taking all of the security solutions that you already have in your environment and just making them work better, automating them, and making your security team more efficient. And so there's a much better, probably a much better way of saying it on the slide. But that's that's my answer, is that Red Hat is not trying to take over as a security vendor. They're becoming a security enabler by helping all these products work together in ways that these vendors are have a hard time doing on their own. So within our lab today, we have as I mentioned before, we have a SIM, an IDS, and a firewall. These are all some of the other security devices that you might see in your environment that Ansible would be able to work with. So specifically, when we talk about the exercise itself, what we're going to be doing is we're going to just verify access to the environment. So hopefully everyone's been able to claim a workstation. So you'll follow these steps to access the environment. So there's there was a link to the workstations. There's a couple of IP addresses, so hopefully you have all that. And there's a little bit of an introduction in the lab material on the editor. There's an Ansible inventory file that's on each of your systems. So the inventory file, as we kind of talked about a little bit before, will have all of the host information that you need. So just generally, all of the points here are great to know about the Ansible inventory file. Your specific inventory file is going to be on your, it's going to be in your workstation. So it'll be in your Visual Studio. And so, and just as the note says, just note the individual IP addresses for each of your machines, because you'll need to know those as we go through the exercises. Within each of the exercises, there's IP addresses, but they're not specific to your lab environment.
Marshall,
yes.
I'm so sorry, Marshall. I'm going to jump in. We have 2 questions in the Q&A if you want to look.
Oh, perfect. Thank you for pointing that out.
You got it.
Oh, blocked by security umbrella. Mm. Let's see. Let me just work through these real quick, and then I'll see if I can figure out how to get through the security umbrella. So I think I'm getting close to the end of these slides. So here's the inventory file. Here's what it would look like. So it just lists some variables at the top. It has our control node, our SIM node, our IDS node, and it'll list firewall and some other information. And as we see, there's some additional information that's listed that has more than just the host information. So it lists passwords and some other information. So this is all information that Ansible would use to connect to the system, negotiate SSL and some other variables such as that. This configuration file, as I mentioned, is in your Visual Studio link. It's .ansible.config in the home directory. And with that, we will start the exercise. And so what we're going to do, so I'll let you get going. So on the login page for the workshop that you went to, there is a link for Ansible security exercises. And if you scroll down about halfway through the page, there's exercise 1.1, exploring the lab environment. If you'll click on that link, and if you'd like to start going through that, and once I'll work on this security umbrella for a few minutes, the security umbrella question. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to go through and just talk about the exercise. And if anyone has any questions about the exercise, feel free to go off mute or pop it in the Q&A or the chat, and I will be happy to answer any questions. So here's the front page that you should see if you clicked on the link for here's the security automation workshops exercise link, and we'll click on that, and then this is the link or the page that we would see. So exploring the lab environment, this goes through and talks about the objective. So the objective is to just to understand the lab environment and make sure that everything's set up and working properly. So within our lab environment, we have an Ansible control host. We have IBM QRadar. We have an attacker host. We have Snort, checkpoint management server, checkpoint gateway, and a Windows workstation. Here's a little diagram of what the network should look like. And so we're going to have, for our exercises, we're going to set up some incidents, and those are going to be running off of our target machine. And our target machine's basically a RHEL installation with Snort installed, and it's going to be running a simplified web server. So the first task is to access the Visual Studio. And so this is the first link. If you clicked on that link, you would have went to a login or a page with a password prompt. Enter the password that's provided on your login page, or with the credentials that should have been provided on your page. And here's the welcome page of the Visual Studio. Hopefully everyone's able to get to this point of the exercise. All right. So when we get to the next step, step 1.4, this is opening a terminal. So we'll go to terminal and then new terminal. And the goal here is just to type Ansible -- version, and just to make sure Ansible is installed. So it's not too hard of a task. And hopefully everything is running properly. And as we can see, nothing's really required to be running other than the fact that it just is installed. So when we get to step 1.5, we're just going to look up our inventory. So we're going to go to File and then Open File. And then we'll see a drop-down menu. And it's going to be Home and then Student and whatever your student number is. And Ansible.config is the config file. Oh, I guess I should read the instructions, huh? Pick the lab inventory file. All right. And then that'll show you all the hosts that are in your environment. And that'll show you all of your IP addresses. There is a note that not all of the hosts can be accessed via SSH or WinRM. So some are through REST API, RDP, or web browser. So each exercise is going to let us know what we need to use. So all right, and that brings us to the end of the lab.
How are we doing so far, guys? I see we have one hand up for someone finished. Is everybody else keeping pace? Let me know if you have any questions.
All right. Okay. Is anybody having any problems? Let's go with that. So let's, all right, well, we're going to need to keep moving.
And remember, guys, you don't have to type in all the code yourself. You can copy and paste from the lab instructions into your environment, so you don't have to hand type every character.
Yes, thank you for mentioning that. That's going to be important as we get further into this, because there's going to be a lot of typing. So so yeah, definitely copy and paste, and that'll help each of these exercises go along a little. It'll help you get through the typing part of it faster. But take your time on understanding the exercises, because that's the whole point of this. So as we move to exercise 1.2, we're going to work with the checkpoint firewall. So we're going to access the firewall through our smart. We're going to access our smart console. We're going to do example interaction via Ansible, and then we're going to verify the results in the user interface. So this is going to be an example of how we can use Ansible to configure or reconfigure our firewalls. And when we get to the end of the exercise, and when we get into the security use cases, you'll see how powerful that can be when we use that in a security center, or we use that in our security operations center context. So accessing and managing the checkpoint firewall, what we're going to be doing, because we can't access the checkpoint firewall directly, we use a management interface. We use the smart console, as Checkpoint calls it. So, so what we have set up is we have one of two ways that you can access this. So we have a Windows workstation provision for you. So you can either access the Windows workstation through an RDP client if you're using a Windows workstation, or we have an HTML5 client that you can use if you're not using an RDP client, or if you're on a restricted network, or if you have network restrictions that don't allow you to use RDP. When we use automation through Ansible, we're going to be using the REST API to manage the checkpoint firewall. So this is what the interface looks like on the smart console. What we're going to be doing is we're going to be just running our first playbook is just a list of tasks. We're going to see how the tasks have a couple of modules, and then we're also going to be using a role to group tasks in a reusable way. And so that's some of the key concepts that we'll be using in this first lab. So I know this is kind of a tough slide to see. It's so dark, and I had a hard time fixing it. But this is kind of what a play in a playbook would look like. So this is first play, and there's two plays that are listed here. So I'll just go to the next one. So in an Ansible play, here's some of the common elements. This is not an exhaustive list, but these are just some of the common elements that we'll see. So we have hosts, which is where we're going to be executing our playbook at. We have our connection port, remote user. So some of these things kind of should be sometimes are a little intuitive as to what they are. The become flag. So the become flag allows us to elevate privilege. We can also use some of these other become methods to become a specific user, or to do some other advanced things with become. But just become. And we'll see become yes. If we just change that to yes, it will just execute as the typically as root or sysadmin or a system administrator, or whatever permission that we log in with the Ansible connection. Some of the other common elements: the name of the play, gather facts, no log. Ignore errors. So this is another important thing. So this is a way that we can ignore errors without it causing the execution to stop completely unless there's an absolutely fatal error. And then check mode, that's another great thing that we'll be using, or that we can use to evaluate but not execute our playbooks. And then when we have inventory handling, we can modify the order. We also have variable handling with different variables that we can do. So these are some of the common elements that are in our playbooks. Just to kind of give you an idea of some of the things you'll be seeing or encountering as we go through this. Some of the other elements that we'll see are pre-tasks. So these are tasks that get executed before roles. Roles are things that we can import into the play. We have our tasks. These are the main things that we're doing during the play. And then we have our post tasks and then our handlers. So as we look at a playbook, this is how they all come together to provide a playbook. So, so as we go through that, as we go through these examples, you'll start seeing how these are put together. And this is the use of modules. And so we can see that we're using a module here. And so as we run a module, or as we run a playbook, I'm sorry, as we run an Ansible playbook, the status is represented in colors. And so, so we have these 6 main colors. So we have green to show that something was executed as expected, but no change was made. Yellow, the task was executed as expected and a change was made. White for just general information. Blue was for something that was skipped. Magenta was, or whatever color that is, for bugs or deprecation warnings. And then red is the color for failure. So, so those are the 6 main colors that we'll see when we execute an Ansible playbook. And this is an Ansible playbook execution and the results. And so we see that we have the green showing us successful execution with nothing being changed. And then we see the yellow with successful execution and changes being made. And then at the bottom, we'll see the recap. And so we have 3 changes that were, 3 successful executions with no changes being made, and then 3 successful executions with changes being made. For our exercise, once we execute a playbook, we're going to log back in, or we're going to go back to our Smart Console, and we're going to check just to verify that the Ansible ran, just to verify that what we did with Ansible actually made some changes. So we mentioned roles before. So roles, just a way to load tasks, handlers, and variables from separate files. There's a couple other points here. So there's some pre-built roles for checkpoint interaction available. And these roles have this role structure. So this is really a defined structure that we have for roles. We have defaults, handlers, meta data, tasks, templates, tests, and variables. And so this is the role structure that each role will have. And roles are maintained on an Ansible Galaxy. And so there's it's maintained by the community as well as by Red Hat. And this is a place where content is shared. So this is a great thing. All right. So when we want to use roles within from Ansible Galaxy, there's an Ansible Galaxy command. So Ansible-Galaxy install, and then we can give it the name of the role that we want to install. So with this specific one, it's Ansible_security.acl_manager. And with that, we'll move into the exercise 1.2. And on our list of exercises, that will be exercise 1.2, executing the first checkpoint playbook. And this brings us to our first break as well. So, let's take a,
Do you want to do 5 minutes, and then we have a couple minutes grace if anybody's running a little behind?
Yeah, so let's take a 5-minute break to hit the restroom or grab a drink, and we'll convene back here at 2:05 Eastern time. I'm not sure where everybody else is. 1:05 Central. All right. So this exercise 1.2, we're going to be executing our first checkpoint playbook. So the goal of this exercise is to show how we can automate how working with firewalls in general. So I know we're working with a checkpoint firewall. We have to work with something, but this is really, we could work with this. If we think about it, this could be any one of our firewalls in our environment. The principle would be exactly the same for a Cisco firewall or any other firewall that we would have in our environment. We just happen to have a checkpoint today, but the principles would be exactly the same for any other firewall. So first, the first step is just some colorful commentary around what I just said. Step 2 is to access the Windows server. So once we access the Windows server, we'll launch the Smart Console. There should be a desktop icon that you can double click on. So once you double click on the icon, then the Checkpoint Smart Console should open up, or at least the login screen. So we're gonna type in the username admin123 is the password. And from our Ansible inventory, lab inventory, we'll have our checkpoint host. So we'll put that in and we'll press the login button. And we should come up with this, the main screen. And we're going to click on the security policy on the left-hand side and just note that there's only one rule, and that's to drop all traffic. So right now our firewall is doing its heavy work by just just dropping everything. So now we're gonna for step 2.4, or for the next task in our exercise. This is really going to go into our first playbook. So how exciting. So the first part of this just goes over the Apache example that we had before of our Apache playbook. It shows the common elements that we described: name, hosts, become, the variables, the tasks. It shows the module. So yeah, so here's just the example playbook that we have that we saw in our slides. And then we have here in our tip, the nice little analogy. I don't know if I can come up with a better analogy off the top of my head, or I don't know if I had anything prepared. So, but thinking about modules, they're the tools in our workshop. The inventory is the material, and the playbooks are the instructions on how to use those. So now what we're going to do is we're going to write a playbook to change the configuration of our checkpoint firewall. So the first step is to create a new file. So on our Visual Studio code editor, we're going to open up a new file. So we'll click on File and New File. And we're going to save it right away without doing without putting anything into the file. So we'll click on File and then Save As. And we want to make sure that it's saved into our student directory. So it'll be home and then student and then your student number. And then the name of the file is going to be whitelist_attacker.yml. So you can really name it anything you wanted to, but it will help to keep everything organized if you use the name that, if you use this name or something similar to it. So once we do that, this is where the helpful tip from Felicia will come in. So our first few lines that we're going to enter in is our first 3 dashes. This is just going to let us know, or it's going to let Ansible know that it's dealing with a YAML file. And then the next line is just going to have a dash and then the name, or the keyword name, to let us know what the name of the playbook is. And then we're going to have hosts. So as it mentions here in the note, normally we would say we would use like all hosts and then limit the execution later, either on the command line or using tower. But right now we're just using, we're just going to simplify the process by using our inventory file and using the checkpoint group that we have created. And so within our .ansible config file, there should be a checkpoint configured. And I don't know, let's see, checkpoint, yeah. So within our lab inventory file, there's a host labeled checkpoint. So it's going to execute this play against this host. And so as we work down, we get into the variable section. So the variables just set up the source IP and the destination IP. And these variables will be substituted as the playbook is run. So the source IP is going to be the attacker IP address, and then the destination IP is going to be the snort IP address. As we move further down through the explanation of how the playbook is set up, we're going to start creating our tasks. So our task is to create our source IP host object. So this is where we're going to have our module. Our module is going to be checkpoint host. And so within the module, checkpoint host, we have our name and our IP address. So we're going to give it our, the name is going to be ASA dash, and then our variable that we created, source IP, and then our IP address is going to be our variable that we created, source IP, which will be substituted. Hopefully I'm not moving along. So all right, as we move further down the file, so we have our tasks. So we have our create source IP host object and our destination host IP object. Our next task is going to be to create the access rule. And so, so this is going to be to actually create the access rule within the firewall. So we have another module that we're using, checkpoint access rule. So this is going to come from our checkpoint role. We have an auto install policy. So this is all explained in the information here, but our auto install policy is going to automatically install and publish the policy. It's going to do some of these other things, create this, the name and the source, and then the destination, and change the action or set the action to accept. And then the last task is going to be install policy. So we have another module that we're using to install the policy. And it's going to install even if, so it's going to install in all cluster members, or it fails. And we know that it fails if anything is set to false, if any of the, if we have any errors. So, all right. So we can take this final play, or we can take this final section and just click on copy and paste this into our editor if you haven't already. And then we can click on save. So once we create a new playbook, we'll want to run the syntax check. The syntax check will let us know if there's any syntax problems. So if you have any, so if you run the syntax check and you have any syntax problems, then there's some errors. There's a little bit of a note up here about white spaces and indentation. So YAML's very picky about this. And playbooks fail because of wrong indentation. So that's one of the little things about YAML that honestly, it kind of is a little challenging at first to keep track of. But once you get used to it, it's no big deal. It's just one of those little things that sometimes is a little something something challenging with a new format, but it's not hard to get to use. I don't think, at least. So anyway, once we get the syntax check running with no errors, we will run the Ansible playbook. Whoops, little too far. So we'll type Ansible-playbook and then our playbook name, and that will run. Hopefully we'll have the same status of OK equals 4 and changed equals 3. Is everyone following along so far? No problems? Is anybody having any problems?
I think we're doing good. Maybe give them a couple minutes to finish up because this is a lot of copy and paste stuff.
Yep.
Okay, I have one attendee who's 5 minutes behind where you just ended the exercise, so maybe we'll give him 5 minutes to catch up.
Fantastic.
Cool. And then one other thing that I wanted to mention is that, did you know that there's not really a way to validate Ansible playbooks except by running the check command? So that's something to keep in mind when you're executing other playbooks. Don't do it now, but the -- check command will tell you what a playbook is designed to do without actually executing it, and that's a way that you can make sure that it's going to do what you want it to.
That is an excellent point. Thank you for bringing that up.
Remember, guys, if you're finished, put your hands up so that we have a good show of where everybody is, but we're going to proceed in about 4 more minutes.
Oh, and Mike Savage with Red Hat brings up an excellent, another excellent point, Ansible lint. So he put the link into the chat. So that's another great resource for playbooks. And that's one of the great things about Ansible is just the the wide amount of contributed content, and there's just so many different ways of doing things, and it's not one monolithic thing that's controlled by a small development group. It's really the community pitching in and really steering the product, and Red Hat providing that enterprise level management and direction overall, and keeping it secure, keeping the code base from just running out of control. But yeah, it's, I think that's one of the, great things about Red Hat is they foster a great collaboration with the open source community, while also providing those enterprise features that we need within our organizations. So hopefully I didn't murder that too much, Mike. Sometimes speaking off the cuff like that doesn't go as well as I hope it will. But all right, so as we kind of wind down this exercise, we would look into the console. So if we got to the point where we ran our playbook and we had the OK equals 4 and changed equals 3 on our play recap. So at the end of each playbook run, we'll have our recap at the end. So hopefully everyone had the same results. We would go back to the console, the smart console, and in the object categories and network objects, and then we pick hosts, we'll see 2 new host entries. And so these are the 2 host entries that our playbook created. And then if we go back to our security policies, we will see our new security policy, access control entered that we created. And when we get to step 2.7 of the exercise, we want to turn on logging for this exercise, and that will be used later in the use cases. So as we, and then once we make that change, it's going to ask us to publish and install. And there's just a little note. So we made just this one change to change the logging, and it was a couple of clicks to confirm that change. And so we can see the power of automating that, because we were able to make several changes without having to click several things. But if we were in the user interface, we would see that we'd have to be clicking a lot of things to make small changes. So, so yeah, automation saves us a lot of time. And if we can imagine, if you had to make several changes or hundreds of changes to a checkpoint firewall, that could be quite tedious after a while. All right.
How are we doing, guys? I only see a couple of hands. Are we a little lost? Do we need some more time? Show of hands if you finished the exercises. I count 3 right now. Okay, I'm gonna guess because we have no questions that we can go on to 1.3, Marshall.
All right. So moving on to exercise 1.3, we're gonna configure snort. As you'll notice as we move through these, the slides are gonna get a little less and less because the Ansible part is gonna be very similar amongst all of these things, all of the things we'll be doing today. So snort, just a little overview of snort. It's just a real-time traffic analysis and packet logging for IP networks. So snort, we think of snort as a intrusion detection system. So it has a set of rules to match traffic as it comes into the system. And when we use automation with Snort, we're going to be doing that through SSH. So just a little bit about Snort rules. So Snort rules can be kind of complicated if you're not, for the uninitiated, I guess. The Snort rules, they have a rule header, and the rule header has these common elements: the alert or the action to take, the TCP or type, type of traffic, source address, source port, the direction operator, the destination address, and the destination ports. So, so the rule header has these. Oh, can't click. Has these common elements for every rule that's that we're going to configure. So it'll have an action, type of traffic, source address, source port, direction operator, destination address, and destination port. And then it'll have the rule options. And so the rule options, we can have one or all of these, depending on what we're looking for. And we'll see that in some of the exercises that we're doing. So we have a role to change rules on Snort. And we the role that we have is going to take care of a lot of the housekeeping items that happen within Snort in the back end. So it's going to take care of service reloading and some of the things that that take a little more time and effort, so that we don't have to worry about putting those tasks into our playbook. And it's also going to verify our changes for us. So, so those are the rules, the role of the role. And as I promised, the slides are getting less and less. So that moves us into exercise 1.3.
Let's rock and roll.
And Paul, did you have a question, or was your hand up from the end of last? Okay, perfect. All right. So I'll give everyone 5 minutes head start before I start yakking again about exercise 1.3. If that's fair. Maybe it's not fair. I know it's a lot easier just to talk about it than it is to actually type it all on the keyboard. All right, so we're getting close to the 5-minute mark. Is anybody having any problems so far? All right, it's a good sign. Okay. So this is the Snort exercise. So what we're going to be doing in this exercise is configuring Snort with Ansible. So as we'll see in the use cases, this will really allow our security operations team, much in the same way that we saw with the configuring checkpoint or configuring a firewall, This will allow our security teams to really react quickly to security events by modifying or adding new configurations to Snort quickly without having to spend a lot of time logging into the interface or connecting to the server itself. So the first step is going to be just connecting to the Snort server itself. So we just want to verify that we can connect to the Snort server. Because of our environment, we're going to connect through SSH. So it's we'll find the IP address in our hosts file in our lab inventory directory. We all have our own individual hosts, so please don't use the IP address in the lab instructions, but it'll be SSH and then a space and then ec2-user @ and then your IP address. Once you'll get the warning that it's adding that host to your list of known hosts, and you'll log in. So there's should be an SSH key already pre-installed. Then we're going to just check and make sure Snort is installed properly by typing sudo snort -- version. And then we're going to check to make sure Snort is running with sudo systemctl status snort. And if we don't see that Snort is running, there's a note here that we can restart it. So every once in a while, Snort doesn't start properly. So, but 92% of the time, it's working properly. So for that, those 8% of people that, the 8% of workstations that are unlucky enough to get the non-working Snort, don't fret. Just type sudo systemctl restart Snort, and then type the other systemctl status Snort again, and it'll be up and running. Okay, and then that brings us into the simple Snort rules. So this just talks a little bit about what we talked about in the slides, the anatomy of a Snort rule. We have action, protocol, source IP, source port, the direction that the traffic is going, the destination IP, destination port, and then the rule options. And there's a link here for the Snort user's manual. Great reading if you can't sleep at night. So we're going to, there's a discussion here about Snort with Ansible. So with Ansible 2.9, which is the version that we're currently using right now, there's not an official set of modules. And so, so there's a role, not a rule, but a role that's been created at Ansible Galaxy to put together some of the things that we're going to be using today. And there's a discussion here about the roles. I'm not going to bore you by reading it all, but hopefully, if you'd like to take some time to go through and read all of this, this is great information. But the important part is to type this wonderful command, Ansible-Galaxy, install Ansible_security.ids_rule. And this will install the Snort role onto our system. And this is going to install it into the default path, which is going to be our .ansible directory, and then into the roles And we looked at the default path in the checkpoint module. So then that's going to bring us to the online editor in our Visual Studio, where we're going to start building our snort rule. So we'll create a new file and save it. We'll want to save it into our student directory. This one's going to be called add_snort_rule.yml. And of course, we don't want to forget the 3 dashes to indicate that we're starting a YAML file. And then we will add our name, hosts. Again, we're going to specify that we're operating against the snort hosts here, just so that, because we're in a small lab environment. But if we were operating in a larger environment, we would use probably the all operator, or we would use something larger, and then use tower or the command line to limit where it's actually running against. So there's some more discussion about each section that it's providing, about the vars, the variables, variables. I know. Sometimes I have a bad habit of just reading what's on the screen, but it's really variables. So then we get to the tasks. So the tasks are, we're going to be adding a rule to snort. And we see that we have a module that we're going to be using from our rule, or we're going to be using not a module, but we're going to be including a role, and that role name is this. So that's going to be doing the heavy lifting for us, and that's going to allow us to add the rule, the rules file, and the rule state. So once we get all that done, we can, we have we can just copy all this, paste that into our editor and save it. We can call the Ansible-Playbook, add snortrule.yml. And so as we look at the output, so let's go back to our task. So we've seen our task that we're calling a role. So we have this role, and we're just providing 3 variables. But when we look at the output, we have our task, and then we see that we have a lot of activities happening. So this is what the role does for us. So the role really does the heavy lifting to do the work for us. So so we can see that it's verifying required variable IDS providers defined, which we didn't define that, so it's skipping that one. It's providing it's ensuring if it's valid. We didn't provide it, so it's skipping it. It's skipping that one because we didn't provide that. Did we provide that? Oh, we did provide that. And then it's going to get to the IDS rule, and then make the change for us. So we're going to get to, and then it's going to restart snort for us to make the change effective. So it's going to do a lot of work for us at the end, and we'll get to a point where it should say OK 4, changed equals 2. Hopefully everyone has gotten close to this point. So there's another role that we can install that's Ansible Galaxy install Ansible_security.ids rule_facts. And this is a rule that checks to see if rules got installed. So hopefully we've gotten to this point. So this is, we'll be verifying the changes. So we'll start a new playbook, verify attack rule.yml, and we'll get down to the end, and we'll copy and paste that into our editor. And we see that we're just importing a role, excuse me. We're providing the name of the role, the variables, and then we're providing an additional task for debug, and then the variable for that. And so when we get down to the execution of the playbook, we see that the debug output spits out our rule that we inserted in our previous playbook. So hopefully everyone got the same result. Is there any questions up to this point? All right. Any problems up to this point? Okay. So we're gonna power through the next section real quick in the next 10 minutes, and then we're gonna take another small break. And then we're gonna work through the QRadar configuration, and then we're gonna get through at least the first of the exercises, the first of the use cases, and then we'll go from there. So IBM QRadar, this is a package to take our security events and evaluate them and tell us what our security challenges are. So it does a lot of great stuff. I could speak a little bit more about it, but we are running out of time. It really automates the intelligence of our security operations center. So it's a security incident and event management system. So it's the SIM in our environment. So with our QRadar environment, our access is going to be through the web user interface, but our automation is going to be through a REST API. For everyone that's familiar with QRadar, this is what the main interface looks like, the web user interface. And this is the threat and security monitoring dashboard with not a lot of data in it. So we have an Ansible Galaxy collection that we'll be installing. So this is a collection of roles and playbooks. So this is very similar to roles, but even more powerful. So it has modules, plugins. It has just a wide range of things. So we're going to be installing that. And then we'll be verifying in the user interface the changes that we're making. And we will be heading off to the exercise now. So we're getting close to a break time again. Getting close to the promised break time. So let's do this. Let's take a break now until 3 o'clock Eastern time, 2 o'clock Central, and we will come back at 3 o'clock on the nose and get going on this lab 1.4. If we look at the lab exercises, So we still have the security automation use cases. So what I want to do, I'd love to get through all three of them, but they, really, they could take a while. So, so what we're going to do is we're going to do the first one, and we're going to do a time check. And then depending on how close we are to 4 o'clock, I want to respect everybody's time. We'll bring Tom back on, and he'll kind of do his wrap up if we're once we get close to 4 o'clock. And then I'll stay afterwards for anybody that wants to continue on. And we have the lab until about 5 o'clock. So I'll stay until 5 Eastern time for anybody that wants to stay and wants to work through the additional use cases that we don't get to. So so that's what we'll do. So everyone, let's take a quick break to get something to drink and use the restroom. Let's come back at 3:01 Eastern time.
All right, guys, let's go ahead and get started with the next section.
All right, thanks for keeping me honest, Felicia. So yeah, get started on the lab. I will give you a couple minutes head start. And we've had a couple of workstations open up, so I'm going to take over one of the unused workstations, and I'll actually, instead of just yakking about it, I'll actually do some work. So maybe that'll slow me down a little bit. But so yeah. And just an addendum on my house cleaning notice before the break. I'd like to get to the threat hunting exercise because that's the Ansible Tower exercise. So I really want to show off the Ansible Tower integration and the power of that. And that's really a quick exercise. So so hopefully we can make it through that. Which I have great confidence that we can do that. And all right. So working with QRadar. So QRadar is sometimes a wildly beast, and so we can get lost in QRadar. But some of the challenges with QRadar is not so much that it's difficult to use or it's difficult to configure. It's really a great product, and it's easy to use, easy to configure. But some of the challenges that I've seen in my travels with QRadar and as a QRadar consultant is that when we have several people configuring QRadar, we end up with different naming conventions. We end up with different ways of identifying offenses or rules, or and it's just not really consistent. And so we end up with a lot of fragments of configurations that we can't keep control of, and we don't know how we don't know what we're currently using or what's active. And so using automation, we can really standardize what we're doing in QRadar. We can keep our names consistent. And then we can also make it easier for our operations personnel to make changes that they need to make to respond to security incidents. So what we're going to be doing today is just setting up a little bit of QRadar. So the exercise is just to go to our QRadar instance, and let me see if I can kind of catch up with everybody. QRadar host. All right, and password is admin, and Ansible 1 with an exclamation point, hopefully. Yep, there's password. All right, so QRadar. So the instructions are just to kind of poke around a little bit. So there's some stuff here. Yep. So let's see. So there's let's see, we want to look at the Ansible Galaxy collection help. So yeah, so we're going to type maybe. And it just shows us the help command for the Ansible collection. All right. Nothing too exciting there. And then we're going to install the IBM QRadar collection. All right, and so that'll bring us to our playbook. So I had this great intent to follow along, but I realized that these labs all build on each other, so I can't I can't start in the middle and follow along because they kind of build on each other. So so I'll just keep doing the same thing of just following along. So once we install the Ansible Galaxy collection, what we will do is we'll just verify that the collection was installed properly by doing a ls-l of the collections directory. And what we're really interested in is the plugin modules directory. So we'll start working on our first playbook. So our first playbook is going to be to find a QRadar rule. So this is an important rule or an important playbook because this will help us find rules within QRadar that we can use for other playbooks. So of course we'll create a find QRadar rule.yml file, start off with our 3 dashes to signify it's a YAML file. And as we build our QRadar file, we'll indicate that we're using a collection. And this is when we specify collections, it's a list operator. So we'll start off with the dash, and then we'll list our collections that we're using. For this one, we're just using one collection, so we'll just have IBM QRadar. Then we'll go into our tasks. Our task is going to be get info about a QRadar rule. So right now we're just putting we're hard coding our rule into it, but we could use variables to use this as more of a generic playbook. And then we're going to use a second task that's going to output that information or output that rule into it as a variable that we created. So the task is gonna take this information, put it into rule info, and then we're gonna use a debug statement to push it back out into rule info using that variable. All right. So as we run the playbook, Ansible-playbook, find _QRadar _rule.yml, we find that we run it, and it's going to find a rule that matches matches our name here. And here's the output that it came up with. So we're going to have our recap, our play recap is going to say, okay, equals 3, and nothing was changed. So that's what we were hoping for, because we're not changing any configuration, we're just finding data. So now we're going to go and create a rule to change this now. So our next playbook is going to be this playbook. And so we're going to use this task that we created to find this rule within QRadar, and then we're going to take that rule info and use it as a variable in our disable statement in the next task. So we're using a playbook to find a rule and then disable it. So when we run this playbook, Ansible playbook, change _QRadar _rule.yml, we should have okay equals 3, changed equals 1, and hopefully everybody got the same result. When we go to the web user interface for QRadar, we'll see that the same change, or we'll see that the change was indeed reported. So, all right. Are there any questions? Did anybody have any problems with that exercise? All right. So I'm going to kind of move along a little more quickly, just so we can get to our first automation use case. So hopefully, after we've gone through the first 4 exercises, you're feeling a little more comfortable using Ansible, that you understand how playbooks are put together, you understand the inventory file. So those first 4 exercises hopefully really reinforce those concepts. So now going into the use cases, we'll see how we can use Ansible, those Ansible concepts, to actually do something useful within security itself. So for our first exercise, what we have is we are the security analyst, and we're working with our QRadar tool, or we're working with QRadar, and we have noticed an anomaly within our network, and we need to figure out if it's a good thing or a bad thing and take the appropriate action. And I apologize for the typo. So we will move to exercise 2.1. And exercise 2.1 is investigation enrichment, which is an exciting one. So I will give you, again, a 5-minute head start to get going, and then I'll start going on again. And please let me know if you have any questions or problems, and I will be sure to get right on it. So, all right. All right, how's everyone coming along? Any problems yet? So one of the the overall idea of these use cases, if we step back and take a look at or think about some of the goals of security. So within security, some of the concepts of security are providing the least amount of privileges to users to do the jobs that they're given to do. And so with Ansible, that really, Ansible lends itself to providing that ability. So if we were to think about having a security operations center and having a security incident, and this is this use case that we have here, investigation enrichment. So we have our security operation personnel, and they need to, or they may have a need to modify the configuration of QRadar, but do we really need to give them access to configure QRadar? So within QRadar itself, QRadar has controls that we can give access to people to do that, but then they have access to do a lot of other things as well, or they can configure more than maybe we want to give them access to. Whereas with Ansible, we can give them specific playbooks that can configure certain things, and they can't move outside of that control. or outside of the control of that playbook. And then when we move into the next exercise, we'll see that even within Tower, that's even more controlled, or more of a controlled environment. So, the use cases for this really lend itself great to security, to that concept of security, providing the least amount of privilege to get the job done that each person needs within our environment. So, as we move into this exercise, the first step is to create this playbook to start the attack. So this playbook that we're going to do, this is just going to do a web attack simulation. So this shows another great power of Ansible, that we can use Ansible to simulate an attack against our network. Not that we would want to do this in production, but it helps us to do all kinds of stuff that we wouldn't think about. And if we were to think about having to write a script to do this, how many hundreds of lines would you have to write to create a web attack simulation? So with Ansible, we're able to do this with 8 lines of code or 10 lines of code. And it's pretty intuitive to write this once you get the hang of it. So we'll create this playbook, and we will run Ansible-playbook web attack simulation.yml. And so this is going to start a small daemon process, and it's just going to execute a command every 5 seconds. And it's a sledgehammer to whack a gnat, but just for the purpose of our lab, it's good enough. So so hopefully you've gotten past that point, and if we we're able to get to the next step, we would SSH to the Snort server, and we would see the web attack simulation happening on our web server. So we can just exit that server, because we really don't want to have to log into our Snort server to see these things, because that's the whole point of seeing this. So within the exercise, we're going to write a playbook to send these alerts off to from Snort to QRadar. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to install a role. And so using Ansible, the Ansible-Galaxy command, we're going to install the Ansible role Ansible_security.ids-config. And so it goes through its thing and downloads it and extracts it and installs it. Should be pretty simple. So we're going to create the enriched log sources YML playbook. Is everyone with me so far? I know this is kind of is a long playbook, or kind of a long section. So this playbook configures Snort to send its external logs to QRadar. So it's going to grab the QRadar IP address from our from our file. So if I can think here, from our Ansible configuration file, and or from our inventory file, excuse me. Ah, geez. So from our inventory file, it's going to grab the QRadar IP address, and so we don't need to know what the so we're not hard coding this in here. So QRadar were to change in the future, we could run this playbook and it would update QRadar. So the task is going to be to import the IDS config rule. And then we're going to add another task to add snort log source to QRadar. So this is going to grab the snort IP address from our inventory file. And it's going to do some configuration within QRadar. And so once we get to this point, we notice that we're also needing to do some work on the checkpoint, and we're missing a QRadar, or we're missing the log manager rule. So what we need to do is we need to open a new terminal and import the Ansible Galaxy install Ansible_security.log manager rule. Or you could have followed the instructions and saved the previous playbook and then reopened it and added the next task, which is configure the checkpoint to send logs to QRadar. And so once we get all this done, we're going to have a playbook that looks just like this. So if you didn't read all that, then you can just copy this. There is one part where you have to copy your server name from the checkpoint and replace it right there. So hopefully everyone caught that. One thing that we can't just directly copy and paste. I know that's the only bad thing about this exercise. So once we get that done, then we will run the playbook. Is everybody with me so far?
I think so. We don't have any questions.
All right. All right. So once we get to this point, let's see. So we're going to run the Ansible playbook enrich log sources. So what this does, if we remember back to the beginning of my rant, we're configuring snort for external logging, which sends all the snort logs to QRadar. We're going to configure, and so then this is going to reconfigure snort. Then we're going to do some remote logging. So yeah, that's still, and then we're going to do the checkpoint logs to QRadar as well. So there's just the tasks that do that. So all these logs are being sent to QRadar. And then now we should start seeing these logs coming into QRadar. There's some information about how to sort for these. And we can go and verify that each of these are being received. So the next part of the exercise is to add a snort signature. So this is another powerful tool that we can give our SOC operators, that they can add additional enrichment rules into snort without having to be an administrator. So this is a powerful thing that we can give to our Security Operations Center, and something that they can do to make these small modifications when security incidents are happening, without giving them total control over our snort or our other IDS or any of the other security controls within our environment. So we'll create a playbook. We'll create this playbook that creates this new snort rule. So we're setting a lot of variables at the beginning and then substituting them into the snort rule itself. Since we're providing these variables right here, we can also provide them on the command line, should we want to override those. But for right now, we're just going to run the Ansible-playbook enrich snort rule. And so what that's going to do is within this rule that we did is the security analyst is deciding if this is a false positive or not. So the security analyst made a change to the signature to rule out if it was a false positive. And when we get to the end of the playbook, we see that in QRadar, that they're all just coming from a single host. And so this is the intended behavior. The SOC analyst is able to narrow this down. So instead of so QRadar labeled it as an offense, but once we were able to narrow down using snort, we were able to identify it as a false positive. And so this kept the security operations team better engaged by not following a false lead. So then the last step of this is to create a new playbook called rollback.yml, which is based on the enriched log sources. And then there's a part in here about killing the process that we started. So hopefully everybody was able to get through those last two pieces. And that
Marshall, we had a question in our box. I'm not quite sure how to answer. Is it possible to list all the collections?
Is it possible to list all the collections? I'm from the command line. I don't know if there is or not. So if we look at the collection command, there's just initialize, build, publish, and install. So there's really not a list command with the Ansible Galaxy collection command. So from the command line, I don't think there is, not unless Mike has a. So the collections are all on Ansible Galaxy, so you can you can use the web page to find all the collections and roles that are available there. If you don't know which collection or role that you're after, so all right, so we've got 20 minutes in the official class time left. That I think that's getting pretty close. So what we're going to do is I'm going to introduce this topic. We're going to work for 10 minutes, and then I'm going to bring Tom on. And then after Tom is kind of finished closing it out, then I will stay on for the next 45 minutes to an hour for anybody that wants to hang out with us and go through the, has any questions with threat hunting. Like I said, threat hunting goes over, we're going to be using Ansible Tower to do the threat hunting with. This will be working with the firewall. And so this is a pretty exciting use case, I think. But I don't think we have enough time to do it justice before we need to get to Tom's closing out remarks. So, so if you'd like to spend 10 minutes taking a good swing at it, and then at 3:50 Eastern time, we're going to bring Tom on to give the closing remarks, so that everyone that has something else planned at the actual closing time of our session can do that. But anyone else that wants to hang out, I'm game for the after hours party, if you will, of more Ansible. So I love Ansible enough, and I'll hang out with you, and we can work through the rest of these exercises. So, all right. With that, exercise 2.2. And since I can't really give you 5 minutes head start, I'll give you a 3 minutes head start. All right, 3 minutes. Seems like a long time when you're watching the clock. All right, brings me back to high school, watching the clock at the end of the day. Okay, so threat hunting. So this is the, as I said, the exciting one, the exciting use case with Ansible Tower. So this really shows the power of Ansible Tower, and also shows a couple of the differences when we log in as different operators. So it shows that one of the, the power that we can provide different operators with different views and different playbooks. And we saw when we're using just Ansible engine that users could really go in and change the playbooks if they really wanted to. With Ansible Tower, not so much. They're really locked in to running playbooks exactly how they're set up. So hopefully everyone was able to log into their tower system. There's a unique set of credentials. The password is the same for each of the 3 users. So once you log in, you'll see the main dashboard, and then there's a playbooks, templates. Click on the templates. And so in the templates, we want to start the DDoS attack simulation. So this is going to I guess we All right, let me start over. So the first thing we need to do is find the entry called blacklist attacker in the templates. We're going to click the rocket symbol, and that's going to bring us to the job overview. Yep. And so that's going to do some work for us, and then we're going to start the DDO. Yeah, okay, yeah. So now we're going to start the attack. All right. So then hopefully you're able to see the attack. And this is where we would log out of Tower and log back in as the Ops Firewall user. So the Ops Firewall user would have a whole separate list of commands. There's a couple of commands that are similar. So we have the blacklist attacker, whitelist attacker, and send firewall logs to QRadar. So the instructions are to send firewall logs to QRadar. And then we are going to also execute the template accept firewall logs into QRadar. And again, we're going to do that by clicking on templates and then clicking on the job and then clicking on the little rocket button. So it's we can see that using Tower is a little more user-friendly than tapping it out on the command line, going the old school method. I know I'm rushing through this one, and I hate it because it's not doing it justice. So I'm gonna stop right there. Does anybody have any questions? Is everybody doing all right with this one? We're getting to the point that I promised we would do the final wrap up remarks. And I really hate to rush this one because this is really a great use case. But this is a use case. As we get further down into this use case, we'll have the option, and and we see that the firewall operator, the ops firewall operator, has the option to either blacklist an attacker or whitelist an attacker. Now, if you can imagine, in a typical enterprise or a typical company, the amount of people that are allowed to do a firewall change is typically pretty small. So when the SOC needs a firewall change and they need the firewall change quickly, tracking down that person, how long does that take? Maybe that group of people or that person is at lunch, maybe they're driving to a job site, maybe they're doing something, who knows what they're doing. And the SOC is sitting there tapping their last year's Pradas, trying to figure out, like, hey, we have a security incident going on and we need this done now. And we can't find the person that actually needs to do the change or that has the authority to do it, versus having the authority through Ansible or Ansible Tower. And so this is a way that we can delegate a small amount of authority to do just this one little task of whitelisting or blacklisting an attacker or an IP address, really in this case, to the SOC, without delegating them a wide range of authority to log into the firewall or to get more expansive command line access. So, so hopefully you can kind of see, as this use case is building, the power that Ansible provides in segmenting that responsibility, but also providing more control to lower levels of your organization, so that you can start pushing responsibility further down to people that are actually needing to get some of that work done without giving them all of that responsibility that goes along with, hey, here's the keys to the entire firewall. Please don't wreck it. So anyway, with that being said, if Tom, are you out there? Would you like to?
Yep, you bet.
I
sure
will.
would. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Perfect.
I will
Okay.
stop sharing and let you take over.
All right, perfect. Thanks, Marshall, for taking us through all of that, and Felicia, your help as well. I see a lot of people have hung in there with us, and hopefully you've gotten a lot out of these exercises. Hey, we ran out of time, but Marshall, thank you for your offer to hang around after this to finish up the use case, or maybe answer any questions that you have. I'm going to share my screen here real quick. I'm not going to take much more time. Let's see where. Give me 1 second here. See the screen. So what's next? What's next is, we had mentioned this earlier, there is a 60-day free trial of Red Hat Ansible. We'll be sending this chart out to you. That you'll have the hot link right there for you to download it and try it.
We don't see it.
Oh, you don't? Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. That's because I have to hit the share button.
There you go.
Can
Perfect.
you see it now? Thank you for the interruption. Thanks, Trish. And that was Trish speaking. So at the bottom there, you see you can contact Trish, and she'll connect you with a member of our team to help you. So as you download the free trial and need some technical assistance, or want to talk to a member of our sales team, we would be more than happy to get on the phone with you and walk you through whatever it is that you need to be walked through there. There's also a security risk assessment that we will do, and I wanted to show you just real quick. Can you see this? You probably can't see that, can you?
I saw it. Yep.
It's the report. Okay, so this is like a 21-page document. This is the report that gets generated from this assessment. I just wanted to show you some of the things that we look at in there as far as the health check is concerned. So this is just a sample report. We look at all aspects of the security environment. So we can do that as part of the risk assessment, and that's a free assessment, and we would be more than willing to do that for you. That's a little more information on the security assessment. And then lastly, I wanted to make mention of another webinar that we're having. This is not a workshop, but it's a webinar. And this is, it's going to be 1 hour, and it's the anatomy of a ransomware attack. And we're going to actually take you through an attack, real life events, how we would handle them, and now how we would mitigate that. So a very interesting topic. It's August 20th. Here at the bottom, there's a link there. We'll take you right to our events page to sign up to attend that event. So if you're interested in that, please join us. And then lastly, different ways to get connected with us. We've got our flagship website out there. We've got different email addresses here that you can contact us. And then I think I told you we were located in Boca Raton as well. That's our headquarters location, although we do have resources and skills pretty much all over the country. And just a big thank you for attending. I appreciate your attending and your attention. and hopefully you got a lot out of this. We do not have a formal survey. We're not going to survey you, but we do welcome any comments that you may have for this workshop. How did we do? How did we, if there was anything that we could improve, we would appreciate any constructive criticism or pats on the back. We would appreciate that too. So with that said, Marshall, I'm going to turn it back over to you. And if people want to hang out with you, that would be great. I myself are going to have to drop. But again, thanks everyone for joining. Appreciate it.